100 years ago.
Wow.
We have some learning to do about our history, and we have to learn why it is that these completely unsustainable ice ages were inserted by the Royal Academy and the Geological Society because they didn't want us to look back. So they totally stuck unsustainable, fictitious, Pleistocene epochs and ice ages between us and our ancient civilizations because they had so much to lose. Because my book shows that the Atlanteans, their progeny still ruled the world. We have a bloodline situation happening here, that after the great pole shifts, these Atlanteans set up their headquarters again in Asia Minor at the new equator, because after you have a pole shift, of course, the equator changes.
Sure, right.
And these guys, having a certain amount of technological knowledge, knew that they better head for the new equator because it's the only place that will sustain life all the year round. So they basically regrouped at the place that we now know today to be Babylon, Sumeria, the Middle East, Iraq, and Iran. So there's a reason why we're coming full circle today, and the vanguard of the West is over in Iraq. There's very important reasons for that. I go into that in my work and also my DVDs. It's a very interesting story to be told about why, what we're really over in Iraq for. But the idea, going back in time, was that after the pole shift, that was the only area that could sustain life. So when we're talking about the post-historical epochs, the rising of the great historical empires, which all school kids learn about, what we're not told is that those empires are based on the old demonic Luciferian Atlantean pattern. Now the Lemurians, the Lemurians who remained after the pole shift, they decided to do something different. Instead of converging, right? They decided to disperse to the four corners of the earth. They did this for security reasons, for safety, because there was so few of them left that they realized that if they ever stick together, they'll probably be wiped out completely in the future ages. So what they did was that they took their knowledge, they split up into contingents, and they moved to the different parts of the earth. And that is why today we find so many of the same cultures, the same dances, the same rituals, the same letters, the same numbers, the same spirituality all over the world. It's because one group took it there. The Lemurians moved to the corners of the world and married in with anybody that they met there, where the Atlanteans congressed, and they moved and started opening up the great dynasties and bloodthirsty empires that we associate with, you know, the Middle East, Sumeria, Babylon, and all other historical epochs basically are based on that pattern of agriculture, suppression of women, conquest and territorialism, and, you know, what have you.
Did they suppress women, Michael, because they were afraid of them and their power?
The story of women, which I go into the book, is absolutely incredible, and I'm amazed that this story has not been told, not even by women. It's amazing to me that I'm one of the first people to come across this story, even though it's there. My work rests on the work of a great writer called Leonard Shlain, who wrote Alphabet versus the Goddess. So certain other scholars have gone into aspects of this, but they're lacking the whole picture. Here's what happened. It's the most remarkable story. Remember I was talking about how the Adams and Eves went into the garden and they were dumbed down?
Right.
Well, what has happened, Alex, was that on Lemuria, the Lemurians, who were completely enlightened beings, turned on genetically and totally aware spiritually, they, of course, had been monitoring what their Atlantean forefathers might do, because they thought, you know, if we leave, it's pretty much likely that these guys might go back to the drawing boards. Let's just keep an eye and spy on them. So when it was discovered that the Atlanteans had, in fact, gone back to the drawing boards, had created another slave race, the Lemurians had a predicament, because they now realized that the beings, those Adams and Eves that were just, you know, walking around the garden completely dumbed down, were in fact genetic cousins to them.
Wow.
So they have now a very important moral predicament. It's the same way we would. Well, how would you be if you escaped from a concentration camp, but you knew that your brothers and your sisters were still caught in there?
Sure.
You couldn't just go about your business, you know, as you would. So what happened, in fact, was that the Lemurians decided to surreptitiously go into the garden. That means go back to Atlantis or to any of these outlying areas and try to open dialogue with these dumbed-down Adams, the Adamic race. And this succeeded. And in the Bible, that is referred to as the serpent entering the garden. Now, it's the reverse story that we have been told. Because, again, the Christians wanted to depress the symbolism of the female, so they turned the story I'm going to tell you now on its head and made the Eve the evil one. But the true story was that the sons of the serpent, because that's another name for the Lemurians, they sent their ambassadors, their representatives, into the Garden of Eden to open dialogue with the Adams and the Eves. And the old legends say that the Adams could not get it. The Adams just could not relate. But the Eves could. And it was the Eves, that's the female branch, They were attracted by these mysterious, enlightened, illumined beings. They found them intriguing, and something about their energy made sense. So it was the female Eves that were the ones who decided to accompany the Lemurians back to their own continent and to be awakened, to be initiated into all that was hidden from them. Now, when I talk, in front of audiences all over the world on this subject, invariably women come over to me at the end and go, Michael, why is it that the Eves bothered taking the dumbass Adams with them? Why didn't they just bugger off and go off with the Lemurians and leave those idiots?
So they took the Adams with them.
Yep, and I tell you, I can see many women crying on the front of the stage over that one after I'm done, and I go, well, look, love, I have no answer for you. I have no answer to that one. I'm glad you did, because I probably wouldn't be here, but there you are. You had to drag those guys along. So what happened was that they basically were the ones responsible for Exodus, for the first true Exodus, which was getting the majority, and I'm not saying all of them left, but I'm saying that a great contingent surreptitiously went with the Lemurians, and there's evidence to even say that they went by spacecraft, because this is prior to the pole shift and the machinery worked. So that is coming to the answer to your question. When the Atlanteans discovered that this was the third time that they had now been snubbed, meaning the first time they'd been thrown out of their own planet, the two, they'd created a perfect servant who wouldn't serve them, and three, when they make that perfect servant, he gets seduced away. They are in a really angry, state.
Yeah.
So what has happened was that they have never forgiven the female. Because what happened was when the female did get to Lemuria, when the Eves came to Lemuria, they were also highly acknowledged, more than the Adams, because it was never forgotten by the sons of the Serpent that the females were the ones who took to them originally. So the Eves were on Lemuria priestesses from point go, and that is where the original Wicca tradition of the initiating female, the wise woman, comes from. These things have a date of birth. They don't just appear out of the blue. The age of the initiator, the female shaman, the female initiator, the Guinevere, the Morgana Le Fay, that comes from a particular place and a particular time. The females were the first ones to be turned on to the knowledge of science and genetics as well, by the way, because the old euphemism that was used for thousands and thousands of years in mythology to represent genetics was called the tree of life, the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or the fruit of the tree of life. The tree of life is the perennial symbol for the knowledge of genetics. So when the God, that's Yahweh, Jehovah, the Atlanteans, said, you shall not eat off the tree of life, they were dumbing them down. They were preventing them from having the knowledge, the scientific knowledge that they had. The Lemurians said to the Adams and Eves, if you come with us, we'll turn you on to all of that. That's your legacy. You should know about it. So, in fact, when the Eves went to Lemuria and they were turned on by they were spiritually and genetically awakened, one of the things that they were awakened into was science, which included the knowledge of the herbs, the knowledge of the flora and the fauna, and many other things besides. But most importantly, they were considered the elite citizens in Lemuria, even as over the males. Now, of course, the reverse is true. In Atlantis, the hate was more for the females then, than it was for the males.
Yeah.
So under the Dominican order and through so many other risings, and by the way, the witch hunts, that's like a very small potatoes rising against female kind. If women only knew what has really been happening to their sex for many, many, many thousands of years, it would make the witch hunts look like pathetic, non-issue. So women have to wake up and realize what has been going on, what kind of legacy that they have lost, and we have to wake up and discover why it is in the back of every mind. We do, in fact, have a memory of a place that is paradisical and peaceful and beautiful. Well, that's not just some wish fulfillment, some Freudian wish fulfillment. That is, in fact, a race memory of a time when we were in a high culture and we have equanimity and we did have a tremendous connection with the flora and the fauna. But the Atlanteans have never forgotten it. So even after the pole shift and the rising of the new empires, the hatred, and it says in the Bible, you shall crawl upon your belly for this, because thou hast done this, you will be considered low. The Christians always make you think, the priests and the clerics always want you to make you hear that God is talking to the serpent. No, he's not. That passage is not God talking to the serpent, that upon thy belly you will go and you will eat of the dust of the earth. In fact, that passage, God is talking to the females, to the Eves.
Wow.
So what we have to understand here, that there's been the women, in the eyes of the Atlanteans and their progeny, women are guilty of a very serious crime, and they're never going to be forgiven for it, and they never have been.
But the crime really is just opening up to knowledge and learning truth.
And you know something? They're deadly afraid that today women might find that out. Why do you think it is that they've never allowed women to hold real office? Why do you think it is that they've never allowed, in any of the three religions of the world, they've never allowed women to be able to inner sanctum, to really go into the libraries, to really read the books, to really be initiated? They don't mind dressing themselves in female robes and sitting in Holy Mother Church and using female symbolism on you to mind control you. They don't mind doing that. And using the cup and the grail, you see, and all the female symbolism, that they'll certainly do. But they'll never let a real female take on that role. Why? Because women once had that role, and they have so much to lose should women matriculate and find out what has been hidden from them. My work is partly to bring to the world a lot of what has been hidden from us, you know, and I believe that the time is right. In the tarot, we have the 21 cards, the 22 cycle, and we're in the 21st century now. We're in the age of solutions. We're in the age of knowledge. The 20th century was the age of problems, so that the human race could find out what problems face us, politically, sociologically, militaristically, and even psychologically. But we're in the 21st century now, which is a time for solutions to those problems. And those solutions are extremely grassroots. You don't have to be a PhD, and you don't have to be, you know, some brain box belonging to some rich government-funded think tank. It's the simplest grassroots approach that is going to solve these mega problems that we've been facing for many thousands of years now.